set it for right before they were about to be done, and I'd just sleep at the control desk and looking through the window until my silence alarm got me one time. And apparently I had slept through the alarm. I wake up, the mic's just sitting there by itself in the production room. Person's gone. Silence alarm is going off.
So they have silence alarms?
Yes.
Do we have a silence alarm?
Probably.
I guess I'll find out someday by really screwing up.
Yeah, that's how you find out about it. But yeah, so if you don't know the silence alarm, I mean, it's this loud because it means that you're now broadcasting dead air. You're no longer broadcasting anything except for air. And the silence alarm would just, and I mean, it is the most excruciating, it's a tornado siren, basically. Letting you know you've messed up.
You're disappointing advertisers. Hurry up.
Yeah.
Is that because they assume you're asleep?
No, they assume that they want you to know that there's something wrong.
Yeah, there's something
You
wrong.
may
You
actually
might be in the
think that you're
bathroom.
broadcasting something, but you're not.
I bet it sounds like a pre-computer system. Like, you don't need a computer to do it. Yeah.
Well, and, I mean, mind you, this was in 1998, 99, 2000. We were still using they almost looked like 8-tracks. The whatever they were called.
Oh, the carts. Yeah,
the carts,
we got those things over there, yeah.
Yeah, that's how we did. You know, we would record like news pieces onto those, and then they would just be lined up on this like carousel.
Yeah,
control
yeah.
tower.
You're just like, oh
You
man.
just pull the one you need, and you'd pop it in and roll with it.
And the magnetic tape inside those things is on some sort of weird Mobius strip loop where you can play and record over it forever. Yeah, I'm so glad we don't mess with that stuff anymore, but it was really cool.
I had also on the Sunday morning shifts, I would have the guy that would call the very crazy, the rural version of Paoli. He's like, you know, there's this group I really like them, and me and whatever her name was, we really enjoy getting to hear them. Now she made some fresh sausage and biscuit gravies. I'd be glad to drop them off at the back door for you. And he would come up, and you had the little fire stairs, and you could come up the back door, went right in the control door, and he'd bring me a plate with sausage and biscuits. Right there. And his expectation was I was going to play this one group, at least a couple of songs from it while I was on there.
I guess that's payola, but with gravy.
Yeah, there you go.
That's fine with me. If anybody listening, I threw us on the air while you were talking, by the way.
Cool.
Sorry
So I
about
just
that.
admitted to like breaking the law on air. Awesome.
Bribes
Fortunately,
and
Kentucky has
biscuits
no
and
statute of
gravy.
limitations. Yeah, they're gonna come after you. The cornbread mafia.
Over my
Find out
sausage
about
and
this.
biscuits.
Well, if anybody would like to bribe us to play anything or discuss anything by bringing us biscuits and
I will
gravy.
take biscuits and gravy, absolutely.
I've been here since 2 a.m. I'm getting a little hungry. So this is WRFL 88.1 all the way to the left, and this is Radio 3 Eskippakithiki. And Michael and Geoff Young couldn't be with us today, but our special guests, Josh Murs and Andrea Welker, are here to talk about Kentucky politics and whatever we wander into as the day goes by.
Biscuits and gravy.
Yeah. As long as it's fascinating, that's all that really matters.
Well, you know, trying to get here at this time, I actually went through 3 fast food restaurants between Hamburg and here, and none of them were open.
That's horrible.
No open 24-hour restaurants because I was, hungry because I need to eat, and nothing at all.
Not even near campus?
No, even the McDonald's right here on Nicholasville Road wasn't open.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with this show is you can't get a quesadilla before you come here. It's really upsetting. I'm on this 48-hour hell ride right now where, like, I've been awake for a really long time. No, it's fine. I'm just running on caffeine. But not being able to get a quesadilla before this show is actually one of the main really issues. You know, that's my reward for being up early in the morning is I get a quesadilla. But none such. In any case, so it's Super Tuesday, which is super duper.
It is.
Do you all have anybody to declare anybody you're rooting for this year?
Well, I mean, it's, we're gonna see the race shape itself out today. Over the weekend, definitely, depending on where you fall on the coin, it was either a massive conspiracy or it was just an alignment of the traditional centrist wing of the party. And you're going to see kind of how those votes fall and how those folks line up, and we're going to see it as a two-person race today and going forward.
Yeah. I'm actually really glad Elizabeth Warren's staying in the race because,
Me too. That's my pick.
Yeah, I like her a lot as a person. I am a Bernie guy going way, way, way back, but I think she's locking up Biden votes. I don't think that her voters are going to go for Bernie at all.
I will. I'm.
I would.
Yeah,
I would tend to
my
disagree
second
with
choice,
you.
You think so?
Yeah, I think the majority of Warren's votes, if she were to step out, the majority of her votes are headed to Sanders. I think.
Well, I guess it's just because where I hang out on the internet. But to me, like most of the people I know that like Warren are people that like Sanders but don't want to admit it, or she's Sanders for people that just don't like Bernie. And when she's out, I don't think that's going to change. I guess we'll find out. It doesn't really matter one way or the other.
Maybe Tulsi will get 2 supporters now.
I'm really, okay, as you know, I have a fondness for hopeless electoral cases. But
Womp womp.
yeah, no, she's fantastic. She's holding her own, and I hope she stays until I hope she gets a delegate eventually.
I think isn't she counting on like American Samoa or something to give her a delegate? They vote today, don't they? Or have they already voted, actually?
I think something like, yeah.
Has American Samoa already voted? I mean, aren't they ahead of us on the
Oh my god,
the time?
I can't remember
Everybody's
all the
ahead of
trivia
us.
I get.
Are
but
we
yeah.
like last?
No, I
We're
meant
one
like
of the last.
I meant like on the time zones. Like
Yeah, no,
Oh,
something
you know,
yes,
like
yes.
you know, you celebrate like Australia's New Year's Eve comes like at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Because
for
on election day they always vote the first.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's always Americans. Okay, well there you go. She's
So
gonna
they may
be
have
a
she may already have a delegate.
Yeah. So God bless her. Let her stay in. Let Gabbard stay in. Let I mean, there's like a couple others that everybody's forgetting that are still in there somewhere.
Are there?
I think so. I think there's still a few like collecting along the bottom that nobody ever talked about, nobody ever heard of.
Anybody who
Well,
was
like-
at a debate though?
Well, like I have
No.
not heard. Has Bennett officially
Yes.
dropped out? He has.
Yeah, he dropped out of what I still haven't
Okay.
figured out who he was. I'm glad.
Well,
I
he was
saved
Colorado senator, and
Okay.
he gave like one really fiery, impassioned speech from the Senate floor a couple of months ago, and everybody liked him, but that was it.
That. Yeah. Well, I don't know enough about him to know why it didn't work or why it didn't take off. To me, this thing has always been about. You're welcome to hear an opinion on this, but I think Sanders is in front of a tsunami. Like I don't think there's anybody else that has even close to the structure he has.
Well, I mean, he's been running for president for 5 years now.
Yeah.
I mean, you tend to build a pretty good structure if you can, reactivate what you had, which was a good structure 4 years ago. You can reactivate that, and it was, for a lot of folks, when Hillary lost in 2016, Bernie was coming back in 2020 no matter what. We knew that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's easy to have a solid structure when you've been working on it for 5 years.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, stuff like Our Revolution didn't really work, but it did exist, so they were out there. They were like planting the flag. Oh, okay.
Now, they've been fantastic in local races.
What, Our Revolution?
Our Revolution, yeah. I mean, it really, and I know that it stemmed from that 2016, but they have done a great job, at least we've seen it, in sort of the smaller scale races. The effect that grassroots part can have on a council race or a state legislative race is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were all in with Sherilyn Stevenson.
Yeah.
And it worked. And also Orky blew to pieces shortly thereafter and has completely unrestartable. I was telling everybody, it's like, we had a Sanders organization in 2018. All we got to do is start it up again. Completely impossible because everybody's pissed at each other. Like, that's the left. Everybody just goes in a circle hating each other. It's annoying. I'm sorry. I do it too.
Yeah,
I'm as bad as
think
anybody.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a shame. You look at all the stuff that falls apart because people can't freaking get along.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the sad part is that, on the vast majority of issues, we're going to find a whole lot more, what's the word? Compromise. We're going to find a whole lot more alike between us than if we go and have a conversation with the young Republicans of whatever they're called now on campus.
Yeah.
And so, I think a lot of the folks on, that kind of the revolution, the movement side of it are wanting to reshape the party to fit, what our generation is really after. And then the problem that you run into is that's kind of like running into the wall that has said, no, this is the way we've done it. This is the way we want to do it. This is who we are. And that's always going to be a struggle. But in the end, we're still going to agree on most things. How do we get there is where we disagree on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not to be fatuous, but we share 98% of our DNA with chimpanzees, and yet we're quite different. So it's those little tiny differences. I don't have an answer. I'm just being a jerk and saying I hear what you're saying, and it just doesn't matter because, everybody's 98% on the same page, and it just doesn't matter. Here we are anyway. I mean, Biden and Sanders are about to fight to the death in Kentucky through proxy. Like, that seems to be the way it's shaping up, right? Is the old money's going with Biden and everybody else is going with Sanders. And
Yeah, I mean, I think that largely, the money is going to be behind Biden.
Yeah.
I mean, he is the extension of. He's the extension of Obama. He's the extension of the Clintons. He's the extension of the traditional Democratic Party. And it's an argument. I think that the fundamental argument is, do we win by being able to speak to the middle, or do we win by being able to encourage and engage new voters that otherwise wouldn't be a part of the process? And that's the central argument about how do we win. Biden is obviously, let's find a way that the left is going to be with us.
Yeah.
Let's find a way to bring the middle along, whereas Sanders is, let's encourage those folks that are on the left that have been left out for the past several cycles, or at least our lifetimes.
Well, yeah.
And let's find a way to bring them into the party. I mean, there's naturally going to be, headbutting along the entire way there.
So honestly, and I know we're supposed to be talking about Kentucky, but honestly, do we win? Do you think it's possible for the Democrats to beat Trump this year?
Yeah, I do.
You think so?
I do.
I think it's ours to lose, yeah.
I think, look at, you want to talk Kentucky politics, look at the governor's race last year.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
That was an all-hands-on-deck fight, though.
it was, but you also had, you had every other down-ballot race went to large, overwhelming losses to the Democrats. With the exception of Secretary of State, and that one we thought we were going to win, and ended up being, about a 5-point loss, 6-point loss.
Yeah.
Everything else was double digits.
I have some feelings about that one.
Well, I understand. I understand. But then we win the governor's race by an average of 1 vote per precinct in the state of Kentucky.
Yeah.
And it's because that the general populace, Democrats, moderates, Republicans, everybody just hated Matt Bevin. And we were before 6 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
Because he was an asshole.
He was.
I mean, that's the bottom line. He was absolutely an ass. And everybody hated him. And that's one of the things that I said from the beginning to a lot of my Kentucky Democratic friends is, especially outside Kentucky, they didn't understand. They saw this and said, "Oh my gosh, Kentucky has gone blue." No, we haven't. We elected.
Oh yeah.
We elected a moderate Democrat because our Republican governor running for re-election was an asshole, and everybody hated him.
Yeah.
There is a lot of that with the Trump effect. You're going to lose. Even in a place like Kentucky. The reason that we had success in state legislative races like the 88th in which is Cheryl Lynn's, which. I know a thing or two about that district. I live there. Largely in those suburban districts, because that's the Republicans that do make the majority in those districts are not your ultra-conservative Republicans, and they don't like the joke that is in the White House right now. And so you're going to see a lot of those folks are coming to our side if we do it right.
You're talking about the Chuck Eddy Republicans.
The Chuck Eddy Republicans. And I love Chuck Eddy.
Oh, God, yes.
I love him to death. But eventually, he's just going to have to go ahead and join the Democratic Party and quit doing the moderate Republican thing. I love him to death. He's great. I love what he's doing.
probably right, but
I want him and others like him to make those changes within the Republican Party, because we used to have at least more sane people in the Republican Party that weren't jumping on the extreme Trump train.
Yeah.
And I miss those Republicans. A lot of my Republican friends are those Republicans.
Yeah.
But that isn't the loudest voice in the Republican Party right now, and I miss that. I miss having sane conversations about policy that we have the same goals, we just have different approaches to them. And we don't have that anymore. It's
do you
really
remember liberal
frustrating.
Republicans?
Yeah.
What was it, like Lincoln Chaffee and stuff like that? I miss those guys.
Vaguely remember them. Yeah.
That's why Chuck's got to stay where he is.
Yeah.
I mean, because he is going to pull the race around with Andy. He and Geoff will manage to drive that conversation to places that Andy doesn't want to go, because all Andy wants to do is talk about abortion. And I mean, I'm totally with. Okay, so. Before Michael and I were looking for the most difficult things we could think of to talk about, and we were talking about returning gun rights to felons, but we can do abortion instead if you'd prefer.
Oh man. What would you prefer to talk about?
I'm totally in favor of a woman's right to choose. I think it's absolutely ludicrous. And I enjoy calling out the libertarians about this, because the libertarians have made a corrupt bargain where they know if they just shut up about abortion, they can win, and all they have to do is just not talk about it. So I enjoy making them talk about it because it's such an obvious issue. Like, how can you have personal freedom without bodily autonomy.
Right.
Like, the libertarians aren't just, like... I know that gaining and holding power is necessary. You can't get around it. You have to win the game, or you're letting everybody down. But at the same time, they're letting everybody down. Like, women really should be able to look at the Libertarian Party as a safe place to go to for protecting their liberty, right?
Right.
So, I enjoy messing with them.
Oh, it's cherry picking your
well, you know,
there.
the Libertarians have to make this compromise to win, and I am of the opinion that Kentucky Democrats have to make the compromise to leave the Libertarians alone in order to win anything in the near future, because the Libertarians are coming over to our side. And
well, in the governor's race, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think we won that race without
No.
Libertarians taking away some of Matt Bevin's votes.
Well, I said last week, but I think there's about 500 people that were required, like, absolutely had to be there for Bevin to lose. And Bevin was one of them. Mm-hmm. But also the Libertarian candidate,
Right.
John Hicks.
J-
No, John Hicks. Josh is
running for Congress.
John Hicks did a fantastic job.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a marvelous guy. I wish there were more libertarians like him, because
Right.
You get into the libertarians who are conservatives who smoke weed, and they're really hard for me to deal with. I like everybody I've met. I think I would honestly tell you if I could think of anybody I'd met who I just straight up don't like. I even got along with Adam Edlin after a while. But
Come on, he had the song. It's what was it? Leading with Edlin. Edlin. Adam's a good guy. Adam has a vision for, you know, how he believes that he could help the state. And, you know, I think unfortunately sometimes in order to get to where you can do those visions, you have to, you know, find a way to get in bed with the Scrooge McDucks of the world. And that's what Adam did. But Adam is Adam's a good guy. He's got a good head on his shoulders, and he'll continue to do good things for the state.
Yeah. I mean, he was always super polite to me,
Yeah.
even when I was messing with him really hard. I mean, that's, you know, we're all just like kids pretending to be grown-ups, and he finds himself on that side of things where he has to be the guy. You know, like do you remember seeing him do debates where he was trying to figure out whether it was more dignified to put his hands in his pocket here or to tuck them down here, and he'd sit on stage and he'd like his. And I laughed, but I also felt for him. And so anyway, he's found himself in this sort of authority position where he's the 80s principal in an 80s movie. And I'm always on the other side where, you know, I never get anything done, but I mess with people. And so... But two of my favorite memories of last year absolutely involved Adam. So...
I can imagine. It was, you know, that was... What were we on for? 5 months? Thereabouts, almost 5 months. It was a phenomenal 5 months for, you know, to be in that primary. And for anyone that doesn't remember, you know, Geoff and I were running the circuit together. We were running to the same places a lot of the times, and you know, it was phenomenal.
Intersecting orbits.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to admit it, but it was about the most fun I ever had.
Good for you both to put yourselves out there to do it, because it's an endeavor. It's a lot of time commitment, money commitment for you, and so it's great to put yourself out there and try it.
The second thing that happened with Adam, the one that made me decide that I really liked the guy, was when we were in Pikeville standing behind Bevin, and Bevin was getting booed, and it was terrifying. It was actually terrifying. Like, you've seen the video, right? Like in the video you can hear what he's saying.
Yeah.
We couldn't.
Oh, wow.
Like, we could see him and his mouth was moving, but like occasionally you would hear syllables, and that was it. And like everybody was just hollering. And you and Josh and Adam were standing behind me, and I turned around and I said, you know, if we play our cards right, that could be us someday. And that's when I realized I don't want to be governor.
No.
Like, I don't know if I even want to be a state rep. Like, it's just signing up to be hated by a bunch of people you don't even know.
Right. Talk about your Twitter trolls. Like that.
Yeah, they really come out. Well, okay, your Twitter trolls. Let's change tracks, because I'm a terrible host, but you wanted to talk about the people who are messing with you on Twitter and why.
No, just the larger conversation with Kentucky education and how outside think tanks and influencers are trying to gain hold, because we're not seeing that not seeing that come from within the state, the big push. We're seeing it from Washington, D.C. and all these out-of-state people who are commenting. So one of the Louisville school board members, Brady, had posted something on Twitter where alluding to this whole story with Betsy DeVos and the scholarship tax credit. So trying to basically put in incentives for Kentucky to pass this and push it through, which we've not done. And hopefully will not do.
Wait, DeVos specifically is trying to get involved in this?
Right. There's an incentive. So the story came out from the Career Journal that there's some incentive that the federal government will, basically dangle a carrot for us to pass this in the tune of a few $1 million. So, which of course on the long term will cost us a lot more. So it's not a great idea, and we don't want to. And so Mr. Brady had posted something on Twitter basically alluding to the past teacher strikes, saying something, flippant like, if you don't want to postpone graduation till June or July, this would be a bad move, basically. And that incited all of the Twitter trolls to come out from these, the think tanks, the Ed Choice think tanks, and just swarming him. They put out some sort of press release condemning him and things like that. But all of this is coming from outside of the state. So locally, he's very well liked. He's very active in the community. And then just so it's interesting to see all this coming. And then I posted something, just tweeted something, and then this swarm of trolls comes for me. And I ended up blocking a bunch of people, and just, I tried in good faith to respond, and it's not an exercise in debate.
Do you think they're being paid, or you think they're just various people who are really into this, or what?
The leader of it definitely is with an Ed Choice organization, one of those adjunct whatevers with the Cato Institute kind of person. So there's money behind that, and that person's being paid. I don't know about the rest of the people who he then retweets, tags a bunch of people to get. That's kind of how that all works. You keep retweeting somebody and you get everybody else insulting them, and then they retweet, and it's just this spiral. And so
you get ratioed and just everybody gets
so I got this little taste of what he was
so
getting.
Is it really that bad, hundreds and hundreds of comments, that bad?
Blowing up your Twitter mentions and then all of your notifications. And so I hadn't really I have 200 followers, so I don't really use Twitter that much, and so getting just a small taste of that was interesting. But seeing these outside influences attacking one of our school board members was pretty interesting. So
it's pretty upsetting. I mean, I know we can't just declare independence from the rest of reality, but the rest of America doesn't appear to do us any favors politically.
No, and that's that's the concern, is why are outside entities so interested in our education system?
Yeah, why?
Why are parents or these other advocates, if they really are in Texas and Missouri and California, why are they so interested in our schools?
Well, I can tell you a little bit. Kentucky is sort of famous around the rest of America for being the best state if you are if you don't want to teach your kids to read. That's putting it badly, because I shouldn't be disrespectful of it. I actually really like it. But Kentucky is well known as the best state for homeschooling.
Right.
Where by far we have the fewest laws. You can just do whatever. Didn't they win that lawsuit a few years ago where they didn't have to teach their kids how to read?
I don't recall, yeah.
Yeah, that happened right around the time I moved back. But, I mean, so that might be why they're paying attention, but it's hard to speculate into other people's...
Well, and that's something that they're very supportive of, is homeschooling and parents' choice for their children's education.
What does that have to do with charters, though?
Exactly. So it's this whole idea that you're not getting a choice. They keep calling them government schools or public schools. Government schools.
Really? That's their new tagline.
Yeah.
Is that it's government schools, not public schools.
Obnoxious.
And so they're going. That is their. I'll give that side of the world credit that they are so much better than messaging. For those little one-line tag, the little short phrases, they are so much better at it than us.
Yeah.
We like to vomit an entire word thesis when we try to talk about an issue, and they just give 2 words, and bam, they've got their poster.
Yeah. I'm a little bit envious of that too. I mean, we could do that too. We just can't. It's not possible. But it would. I guess it's not. It would be nice, is what I'm trying to say. But like, the cats of the left cannot be herded, no matter what.
Well, and I struggle with that just because this is such a more complex issue than simple platitudes, and that drives me crazy. Like, just trying to dilute it down into these little catchphrases. That's frustrating. Like, we want to explore these complex issues. We don't want to just, here you go, here's a tagline, now we solve the problem, we're done.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is how do you then get that messaging out to make people understand that we are working on these problems, it is very complex, here are the barriers, and this throwaway line is not a solution to your problems.
I think abortion's actually the perfect example of like where just reducing it to slogans is evil too strong a word? It lets evil in.
It does.
It's truly thoughtless.
Well, and it goes against all public health research. What we know is evidence-based public health.
Yeah, we don't do policy based on evidence-based research.
No,
I mean that we have to accept that that's not how it works. I worked for the Senate Minority Leadership in Frankfurt back 20 years ago when we created the Choose Life license plates. Mm-hmm. That was a whole bill and a whole debate on the Senate floor. There was an amendment that said choose choice to give you the option of the second license plate, and it was of course soundly defeated. But we passed we being the state of Kentucky passed the Choose Life license plate, and I remember sitting in the caucus room, which is where Democrats would go and hide when they didn't want to be on the floor to be counted for a vote. Yeah. And there were only like 2 Democrats in the entire state Senate back when we actually had half of the Senate that voted against that bill. The vast majority of them hung out in the caucus room and wouldn't cast a vote, wouldn't go on public record for opposing the Choose Life license plate because it was bad.
Yeah.
I think the involvement or influence from outside Kentucky on the charter schools it's money. Mm-hmm. We don't have charter school companies here, and even the ones that start in Kentucky are generally spearheaded by somebody outside of Kentucky. Mm-hmm. So there's a financial benefit to Kentucky embracing charter schools. That's why I think it's coming from. And I saw, not that any of us sitting in this room have the Twitter following that a national talk radio person would have, but I listened to a conservative talk radio guy got into an argument with a very liberal talk radio guy at CPAC, the conservative conference. And so then the conservative radio guy went on his show and said, "This is this guy's Twitter handle. I expect you to go and tell him what you think. Tell him what a bonehead," and started feeding lines. And so that's what they did. Is his followers and his radio listeners went to this other radio show host and just started bashing and just blowing up his Twitter. And that's part of it's being used as a weapon against ideas and people that you don't like anymore.
Yeah. Well, dang it.
And unfortunately, I think the last time I looked, I might have like 1,500 followers, and that's it. I don't have enough to ruin anybody's day with Twitter.
Right, exactly.
But I've sure run into a few people that have had enough to put me in those crosshairs, and it's not a fun place to be.
No, and it's not a good platform for an exchange of ideas. Just, it's too short, it's too brief. If you want to have an honest debate with someone, it's not where you do it.
Yeah.
And everything you say is going to be misconstrued and retweeted with something else, and then insults follow, and it's a toxic platform altogether for debate.
Yeah. No, I ignored it, but it didn't go away. So now I feel like, we're talking about reducing the left to slogans. Forcing you to put something in 280 characters it at least shows the weakness in our slogan game.
Well, we were probably the reason that it had to go from the 144 or 140 to now, because that wasn't enough for us to talk about, for us to have an internet fight.
Oh my God, I did a 14 tweet post about Elizabeth Warren the other day while I was driving. I'm going to die twittering while driving, and I will deserve it. It's a bad platform for that. I mean, but it's the fact is it's more effective, and that's where all the people that are actually really involved in politics are, and things get done on Twitter that don't get done elsewhere. So I don't want to despise it, but it is hard for me to deal with. You know, I was a LiveJournal kid. I'm used to being able to write, thousands and thousands of words about what my critique of Peter Gelderloos's critique of pacifism,
It's an interesting time. I think that there is, for me, Twitter these days has become more of I'll log in and try to get some, if I'm trying to follow the special election results that were last week. Yeah. It's hard to find a special election result in a Kentucky legislative race. Whereas you go to Twitter and suddenly, bam, you've got somebody that's actually sitting there at the county clerk's office tweeting the results. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Joe Sonka I don't like what Joe Sonka's saying. I'm going to see what Daniel DeRoche is saying.
Exactly.
I was like, okay, well, what's Michelle Lindstrom saying?
And you don't have that anywhere else. So that's nice. But otherwise, I mean, Twitter's kind of become that fish that I don't feed, and somehow it's still alive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not up to us. That's the whole point of getting involved in this stuff, is that it's not what you want to do, and it's not what you're interested in. This is what you have to do to get things done. And I mean, you're absolutely right. If you want up-to-date, real-time, like what's happening on the Capitol floor right now, I don't know any way to get it but Twitter. Ugh. I even hate the word. All right. Well, so tell us exactly what's going on with education, because I'm afraid I really don't know.
Well, I think the school voucher thing is just, it's continuing to lurk. We don't know for sure if it'll come up for committee or not. I haven't heard that it's set for a committee. It's just kind of lurking.
To be clear, the school voucher thing is setting up a second education system, right?
They're calling it scholarship tax credits. Basically, you can use the money that you would be contributing, in theory, to the public education system as a student, and move to get that to a private school through a donation. It's a tax credit based on your donation to the school. So it's a dollar for dollar tax credit. What was proposed?
If I could just keep my taxes and spend them on whatever I wanted to, then they
right.
wouldn't be taxes, would they?
Exactly.
I don't think that's fair.
And so there's this circular argument about, I should be able to spend my tax money where I want to, and what's best for my kid, and instead of looking at the overall impact to the education system, that if you start pulling out your kid, then what about the kids left behind, and they have fewer resources? And those are the kids who are most vulnerable. Those are the kids with disabilities who a private school is not going to take. Yeah. That's the number one thing. I do this for a living. I represent kids with disabilities, and especially in Education Matters. That's about 40% of my practice is doing that. Yeah. And these are kids that private schools will not take. And I've even represented kids who went to private schools, and they don't have the same level of protection. So even if they do accept you as a student, they don't necessarily have to provide you with accommodations, not to the same level that public schools do. They don't have to provide you services. If you require special education services, it's the public school that provides those at their expense. Yeah. So this idea that, we're going to take these kids and we're going to serve them better in the private schools isn't necessarily true, even for an individual student, and certainly not true for the collective population. You still have discrimination for LGBTQ students and their families. You have discrimination in other ways.
Well, it's going to be worse.
Right. So you're basically cherry picking students out of the public schools to be able to go to private schools.
Cherry picking, gerrymandering, white flight is what it's called when
right.
you do it.
Or just subsidizing the existing private school population. Mm-hmm. So that's what's going to happen. Is it really going to increase enrollment in private schools, or is it just going to subsidize the ones who are already there, who are already able to afford tuition? Yeah. Because the cap on the income cap on it was it was extraordinarily high. Courier Journal said something about 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, but then what they cited as the 200% was not correct. It was like 95,000 a year, which is far above 200%.
Wait, what's an income cap mean in this?
To say if you had to, in order to qualify for these tax credits, you would have to be up to a certain percent of the federal poverty guidelines. So in the idea that you would not be a wealthy person receiving these. But if we're going up to 95,000 a year, that's
But doesn't that contradict that like only rich people get to pick where their taxes go? that doesn't seem good.
Right, exactly.
I'm thinking of like after during the whole Covington Catholic thing, like we did a lot of research on was it Nelson County up there, and we found out that those 3 counties up there are desperately poor if you're not rich, and actually like the main way these kids are getting nutrition is through school.
Right.
So if you start taking out like if you want to send your kids to, not pick on Covington Catholic, but if you want to send your kids to a private school, that's all well and good. But if you're taking out your taxes, and if you're only taking out the rich person's taxes, they're the ones who pay the most taxes, right?
Right.
I'm not wrong here.
Well, and you also have the issue that when you have an affluent parent, affluent student, when you take them out of a school, you're no longer getting the benefit of that parent's involvement for the school. So those parents who are most affluent generally have the most free time, they have the most expendable income to donate, to get donations. So we also see a disparity with PTAs in public schools because you have more affluent parents at one school and they're able to raise a considerable amount of money to fill in the gaps for things that the district isn't paying for, the state isn't paying for. Whereas higher poverty schools don't have that same power to raise the money. They don't have their, affluent friends to ask for donations, businesses, things like that. So it's the same thing. If you're opting out of that school, then you're taking away your ability to make a positive contribution, and that affects the rest of the student body as well.
Yeah, I mean, and like if you live in Bullitt County and you start sending your kids to a private school in Louisville, Bullitt County's in a whole lot of trouble.
Right.
I mean, because that's the worst point of the gradient. Mm-hmm. Well, I wish I could make the legislature do what I want them to. Like, we have, the Kentucky Constitution's very clear. We have to have a system of public education.
Right.
And it has to be efficient. And I don't understand how setting up another system, when the first system doesn't work, can possibly be construed as efficient. But I also understand that the law has very little to do with what actually happens.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the frustration. We're constantly in a fight to make things more equitable. We're trying to make positive changes. We're trying to, address these disparities, and we have a lot of disparities. We have a lot of work to do in our public schools. And at the same time that we're trying to put out these fires of privatization taking over our schools, we're just like fighting a two-front war because, I want to personally get back to the advocacy work I was doing before, which was fighting with my school district to make sure that my clients have what they need.
Yeah.
So, at the point that I have to spend all my time defending the public schools, it runs counter to that. Like, as on Twitter, I was accused of being paid by the union. Like, oh no, let me tell you how far from that I am.
No.
Like, several years ago, I was the person complaining nonstop about teachers and about, their inability to get out, the bad seeds. But now I'm like, no, we've got to protect our teachers. We've got to protect our schools from outside influence. So
who do you feel is like really working with you on this?
As far as
legislatures and just groups and stuff like that, I do not know as much about this stuff as you do.
So as far as advocacy groups go, I started working with a group called Save Our Schools Kentucky.
NEMA and all those.
Well, NEMA was involved at first, but Lucy Waterbury, who's a local realtor, mom, super education warrior. She's amazing. Has been, hitting the ground running on this, trying to save our schools from the beginning when the whole charter school thing came up. And even though the charter school legislation passed, they did not listen to us about the pitfalls. Like, if we're going to do this, we need to put in protections for instance, students with disabilities to not be excluded. And they didn't listen to us about what the pitfalls were. So trying to get that repealed would be ideal, but I don't have high hopes for repeal. But education advocates, and then once things started getting worse with the pensions and the school funding, threats of cutting funding. And that's when the whole 120 and Nema's group, really just, it exploded overnight. It was, and it's a fantastic movement to see that. And that's the same energy
I'm awfully
going.
fond of it.
Yeah. And seeing that in other states, West Virginia, and the unity that they had in other states.
Well, and all the teachers who are running for office, that's going to have a huge effect.
Right.
Especially if we can get any of them elected. That's a different issue, but
right.
the fact that they're trying.
Just like Travis Brenda unseating a Republican incumbent. Primary and incumbent.
He was the majority leader of the state house.
Right.
It wasn't just
it wasn't just a Republican. It was a big. Yeah, that was a big.
It was the number 2 Republican in the state house.
What do you think, Josh? What do you think to do about education?
Well, we have to, from the top down, bottom up, whatever, we have to have an understanding and a commitment that, that is the greatest equalizer that we have in society.
Yeah.
That, when it's done correctly, and we have a long ways to go to get rid of all of the disparities or challenges that exist within public education. But that is whether you're born in, Andover Village or whether you're born on Loudon Avenue, that you have an opportunity to succeed, to excel in life. And that's why, when the state lost, 92, was it? When we lost whatever year it was back in the early 90s when KERA happened, the Kentucky Education Reform Act.
Yeah,
that was a court case that led to that.
Yeah.
Because we had disparity in how we were spending in school districts, and there has to be an equalization across the board so that everybody has a fair chance. Charter schools doesn't do that.
No.
That gives an unfair advantage to somebody that has the means and the access to do private education. And it's more than just, do you have the financial resources?
Yeah.
There are folks that, if this was my job to get here at 5 o'clock every morning and be here until, 7, how do I get my elementary school kid to school if it's a private school that doesn't offer busing from my house to the school? I can't. I don't have those means. So there's a lot more to it. The discrimination part is incredibly unbelievable. Having been the foster parent to kids with extreme behavioral issues, there is no place for these kids in Fayette County except for our public school system, and it's already a challenge there. But now you're saying that even if I wanted to partake in the voucher program, and I just did air quotes on the radio.
No, I'm going to press a button for a sound effect.
But there is no place for a child with behavioral issues in Fayette County other than public school. And so, there's a lot of things that you're ruling out, folks that need, more educational parity. And you're making it harder. And that's why it just won't fly. And, throughout the entire campaign, the way I described it is I said, Andrea, if I want to build a country club, real fancy golf course, I want you to pay for this golf course. Then I want you to reimburse my membership, but I get to tell you who gets to be a part of that golf course. You don't get any say in that. That's what charter schools are like, and that's just not fair.
Yeah, it's choice for the school. It's choice for the school, not the child. You enter a lottery, perhaps, and you get chosen.
So this is this is like using the same system that cities use to fund stadiums. To fund school. Oh God, that's a terrible idea.
But I don't, and I don't think it's. I don't want you to be. I don't want it to be construed that that's the same. Stadiums have a direct economic impact on a local community. May not be the right thing to do to force the entire city to pay for a stadium, but there's at least some economic impact.
Yeah.
Your charter schools are only taking away money from a government entity. It's taking a brick out of whatever school you want to say in Fayette County and handing it to a group of for-profit folks and saying, "Here you go. You go build whatever you want with this."
And they have the absolute right to discriminate, right? They can just say anybody they want to.
And in theory, they don't. There are, in theory, anyone can enter the lottery. And anyone can, it's supposed to be, just a lottery pick. But once I get there and say my child has extreme behavioral disability, then they can say, oh no, we can't serve you here. This is not an appropriate placement. So maybe they've had your student for a couple of weeks and then they decide that and they send you back to the public school. They kept your money for the year.
Yeah.
So,
wait. So what's the lottery?
So it's just like we have magnet schools in Fayette County, and Jefferson County has them as well. You enter a lottery to say that I would like a space at the school. So Spanish immersion is an example of that in Fayette County. And then they anonymously pick, however set number of students for that. They offer you a place. If not, they go down the wait list.
Oh, so that's not like, merit's the wrong word, but that's not like chosen like to go to the Spanish school or DuPont manual or whatever. It's a lottery?
It's a lottery. It depends on the magnet school. Magnet school like SCAPA is by audition, so you actually have to apply and audition. Some other programs in Fayette County are like that too, as well as Jefferson County. But some are just straight lotteries. If you want a place, you try it.
Now, how would that apply to? How does that apply to charter schools?
That's usually how they do it, is by a straight lottery. But in New Orleans, for instance, it's anecdotal, but if you know someone, you can get a place on the, in the
they're not
school.
fooling anybody,
right?
Yeah.
So how much corruption goes into that? How do you definitely say like they're doing it randomly and not by a favoritism system?
But everybody that goes to a charter is through a lottery, or most of them
it could be,
and then some are lottery.
It could also be it could be like a performing arts school could open up a charter,
Like
and they
Lexington
could say
School. Does Lexington School have a lottery?
No, because it's a private school. I would assume that
And they're
if
never
you
going to
can
go charter because they're totally happy with what they're
right,
doing.
and and their tuition is high enough that they're pretty exclusive.
I didn't get to go.
Yeah.
We actually had a thing when I was a kid where my brother and my sister and I all got scholarships, and my parents figured out they could pay for 2 of us, but not 3, so none of us went. And I'm actually really cool with that.
Yeah.
But what do you think about magnet schools in public school, out of curiosity?
Well, actually, my kids both go to magnet schools.
Yeah.
I like magnet schools. At the same time, I recognize that you have the same problem of you're taking a child out of a neighborhood school that parents are generally going to be either more involved, more affluent.
Yeah.
Just by the fact that you are aware of these programs, you are capable enough to go online and enter the lottery. You're capable enough to arrange
You can afford online access.
Right. You can arrange for the transportation because there's not always going to be a bus for the magnet school.
Yeah.
All of these things are barriers for a lot of families.
Yeah.
So you already have this self-selection into these programs. So when, they tout like, oh, look at these great programs and how much, better their test scores are, there's already a cherry picking to even with the straight lottery. And that's the argument with charter schools. You can say, oh, look at our results, we're so much better. But if you already have parents competent enough to do that process, they already have one up on
if you only
else.
count the A students, then we're all good.
Right, right.
That's fantastic. Thanks.
But in general, and this is why I'm from Jessamine County. I went to school in Jessamine County, and I had a great experience there. I think I had quite a good education there. But I liked the magnet programs in Fayette County because growing up in Jessamine County, oh, that's so cool. Spanish immersion. I'd love to do that. Performing arts, all these other programs that we didn't have because, we were a smaller district, especially at the time. We were much smaller. We only had one high school until I graduated. But what I would like to see more of is incorporating those types of programs into all of the schools. Having more emphasis on language education, having more emphasis on arts and performing arts, because the impact
exact opposite's happening.
Right, exactly.
Exactly
We're backing
opposite
away
what's
from
happening.
those things, and that's unfortunate because those are the things that give kids more outlets for their creativity, outlets for their energy. It boosts their test scores. Not that I particularly care about standardized test scores, but all of these things that helps them be better students and better in control of their emotions and all the benefits.
Better citizens, happier.
Yeah,
better citizens.
all of these benefits to arts, but we're so focused on K-Prep and we're so focused on MAP scores and we're so like, oh, we're failing our kids because they're not scoring proficient on K-Prep and things like that.
Yeah.
We're focusing on the wrong things.
Yeah. As an outsider of the system, I find it baffling. I can't even tell what they're teaching kids anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not happy with the whole system, but I do absolutely agree that charters is just insane. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
It's like taking your money out of the fire department and hiring, it's like, I don't pay taxes, I just hire my own security. Well, to hell with you.
Yeah.
What a dick move. It's not 6
yeah.
yet, right? What a dick move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a world of unlimited funding,
Yeah.
that sounds great. Let everybody choose their own education and choose where they do and whatever, but that's not the world. We don't have unlimited funding for these things. We can't build every kid a new their own school.
As a Kentucky as a product of Kentucky public schools, on the emotional level, I always despised the magnet schools because I was part of the academic team. And we were the best damn academic team in the state. And we could be, from this tiny little town. Right. And we had the best academic team in the state. We could be anybody except for the magnet schools because it wasn't fair.
Because they are the top of the top in a large district, especially.
Well, yeah, it's like Louisville would go through and cherry pick everybody and stick them in DuPont Manual. And of course, we're not going to beat DuPont Manual. And it's so when you have everybody who's on this very democratic footing, and then this one egalitarian, it messes everything up. And I know that academic team is not the major issue for everybody, but
it's because what the difference is if we had if we had sports-based magnet schools, to where they were picking the best of the best in our public schools as far as football, then there would be an uproar.
Right.
There would be an absolute uproar. It's the same way that St. X over in Louisville kept winning the state football championship. So they said, well, you just can't compete in KISSA anymore. You can't play in the public schools. You can't do it.
Right.
That's exactly what we would have. We would have folks, but because it's academic based, it's less. Magnet schools are, sure, they may work great for the kids that are going there. It is the same, to me, it's the same thing as the charter schools. We are creating an unnecessary level of disparity between, the most abled and the least abled in our community. And that's not what public education is supposed to be.
Well, I mean, as far as I can tell, the most valuable thing about public education is it teaches you to get along with other people that are nothing like you. I mean, for almost everybody, public education is the great social experience of their life. Like, it's the only time you meet rich kids and poor kids and people of every different ethnic background and every walk of life, and you sit with them long enough to actually be friends with them or find out you're not friends with them, as the case may be. And this is the one thing, my parents are always after me to put my kids in public schools, and this is the one argument I can't answer. Like, everything else, I'm like, no, our kid is ahead. I mean, not to put Clark County down, but our kid is substantially ahead, air quotes, of where kids are supposed to be in Clark County, and she's much happier. But the one thing that Clark County taught me to do was to deal with crazy people who are angry for things that have nothing to do with you, and a bizarre, obscure authority and irrelevant rules and things like that. I can't teach that at home.
Yeah.
As far as my kids are concerned, the world is filled with rational actors who will talk to them. No, when I went to elementary school, they had a traffic light in the corner of the room, and if people were talking too much, they would turn the traffic light on, and everybody had to stop talking. I could do that at home. But.
So then is your kid then?
Yeah.
Are they missing out on one of probably the maybe not the intended, but one of the best results of being a part of the public school system? Of that cultural awareness, that exposure to other people that are not like me and my tribe.
Yeah. Yeah. And the ability to deal with arbitrary authority without losing your mind is also incredibly important.
Yeah.
I mean, that is missing.
And conflict resolution. I mean, that's a big part of it, is learning to navigate those conflicts with your peers, because, my 8-year-old comes home with, drama all the time with classmates, and learning how to resolve those things is just a big part of life.
Yeah, like high school's where I learned, like, okay, this person's upset for something that has nothing to do with me.
Exactly.
This is clearly lashing out. This is not personal. This is obviously something's wrong at home. This isn't me. And I feel so bad for high school teachers now after what we put them through. I mean, to stand up there. Like that kid, I shouldn't call him a kid. Will Hurst. Are you familiar with Will Hurst?
Will Hurst.
He's running for the 97th district.
Oh, okay.
He's a high school... I did an interview with him, and I was really impressed. He's a high school history teacher. He's 23 years old. And he's trying to knock Bobby McCool out of the legislature.
Good for him.
He might actually do it. He's definitely got charisma.
Will's fantastic.
Yeah.
Will's a great guy. Knows that district, knows those folks. He took me around when in that the statewide primary last year. He took me around his county, introduced me to seemed like everybody, and everybody knew him.
Yeah.
Everybody knew him as the kid of so and so, and I mean but charisma's there, which is great. He has the right ideas, and I think when he announced, the way I described it on whatever social media tool was, if the future of Kentucky is folks like Will Hurst, we're all going to be in good hands.
Yeah, exactly. I got done with the interview and I was like, well, the kids are all right.
Yeah. It's the problem is getting those folks that are, 3 and 4 times Will's age to step aside and let the new let at least one of the 4 generations that have come since have a turn at the wheel.
Those of us who are only twice Will's age.
Exactly.
Totally on board.
We'd still like a chance to drive.
Yeah.
Well, it is our turn. I mean, that was one thing that we looked around last year and like, oh my God, we all went to high school at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like the Gerald Ford babies just all decided at the same time. That's it. We're taking over Kentucky. We can't stand this anymore. Can't watch this anymore. Okay, but yeah, one of Will's ideas that I wanted to run by you was he thinks that we can do trade school for free for everybody in Kentucky for $40 million. And that seems awful low to me, but I was wondering what you thought of that. Actually, discuss that for a second while I get coffee.
Okay.
I mean, I'd have to see the number of kids that are not kids. It's terrible to call them kids.
That
the
number
makes us
so old.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I'm closer to 40 than I am 30 now, so
Closer to 40 than I am to 50.
Same.
So I'd have to see what the number of folks that are attending the trade schools. I think it's an ambitious plan that the general idea, whether it costs $40 million or whether it costs $80 million, it's the right plan. The more that we make, the more that we make education available, the better off we are. And I've long said that, post high school, it doesn't necessarily mean college. It doesn't necessarily mean coming to the University of Kentucky. We need folks that are well-versed and skilled in the trades. Trust me, because I can't fix the toilet in my house to save my life. I need somebody that knows how to do that.
Right.
And I'm willing to pay them to do that.
We'll get paid better than you will. Really.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that. You're an expert on this, and we need folks going into the trades. And to make it accessible, part of the problem in you go into some areas of the state when you get outside and we have our impoverished pockets of Fayette County, don't get me wrong, but there are parts of the state where it's not impoverished pockets, it's the entire county is just truly poor.
Yeah.
How do we help folks get out of that? It's not by giving them, my degree's in history, and I love history, but, having somebody have a degree in history that, they don't even use that piece of paper, which I don't in my professional life, that's not helpful. But having somebody that, can do HVAC repair, that's a good, it's a roll right into, into professional employment. We got to make that accessible and available. And we have failed parts of the state by not investing in our community and technical schools in the right way.
Yeah.
We're cutting courses instead of expanding courses. We're raising prices instead of giving assistance. And it's just not the right way to do it.
No, and we're putting them in jail.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of our workforce is locked up.
Well, and that poses a problem for certain professions too, like nursing. So if you have, if you have any sort of past history of drug charges or anything like that, you're not going to be able to be a nurse. So
yeah, that's a really good. Well, I mean, I despise calling it the opioid epidemic because that puts a nice little bow on it that doesn't. What happened is everybody got hooked on pills and died.
Right.
It wasn't you can call it an epidemic, and maybe it was.
Yeah.
But that tore a hole right through the middle of the trades in Kentucky. Like, it's really hard to get help in construction these days. It's really hard to find a carpenter or a plumber or anybody, especially on the poor county corners of the state. Because that's exactly who got taken out by easy access to pills.
Yep.
I mean, the pills that were shoved down this state's throat.
Yeah. and I practiced. Began practicing in Ashland right out of law school, and it was interesting back before you had these restrictions on how much pain medicine you could prescribe as a physician.
Yeah.
We would have. I mean, the first thing we would do in a family law case is we would check pharmacy records. We subpoenaed pharmacy records from all around, and we'd find people being prescribed. I mean, enough that.
Yeah.
If you weren't actively dying of cancer, you should not be taking this level of pain.
Yeah, if you're not Rush Limbaugh, you shouldn't have that. Yeah. Yeah, you're like, you're shopping for the whole neighborhood here. No, I mean, I laugh about it, but those were bad times. And
they really were.
Yeah.
And and that's where it, changed over from pain pills to heroin when we put restrictions on pain pills.
Yeah.
So we, traded one problem for another. But we would see professionals, we'd see nurses, we would see, tradesmen who were drug addicts, and then they could no longer work, and they would lose their jobs, and they lose their livelihoods. Their kids would end up in either foster care or placed with grandparents or other relatives, and the disruption that comes from that. And that was, that's a big piece of this education thing that we're talking about, is that we can't, as a school-based solution, fix these problems that are stemming from all of these other socioeconomic issues.
No, you just said something that tied it together. You can't be a teacher if you have any sort of drug pass, right?
I would assume so.
I don't know how that works.
I would say, I would say you could not get, you would have to.
It'd be harder at the very least.
Passing background checks and things like that.
Well, you're not going to be working at a fancy charter school, that's for sure.
That's for sure.
And, I mean,
hopefully not.
Kentucky's lack of statute of limitations would also play into this here. So I mean, we complain about being poor, and we complain about having a terrible economy, but they all stem to the same general few problems. I mean, we talk about kids being raised by their grandparents like it's some sort of isolated issue that is in no way related to, hey, by the way, I also can't get a carpenter to come work on my house.
Right.
Same issue. That's where the parent is. And I have a little bit of a medical background, and I have a lot of sympathy for people who are hooked on pills. And I just consider myself lucky that it didn't happen to me. Like, I don't think it was anything else. I think it was pure luck.
Yeah.
And, I mean, people are in pain, and pain medicine works. And pain medicine is addictive in direct proportion to how effective it is.
Right.
And you take it in direct proportion to how much pain you're in. And all these kids that went through high school and have injuries from high school football or high school whatever sports, and then they get into construction, and they're hurting all the time from lifting stuff and torquing or nurses. I mean, what nurses do to their bodies lifting patients.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially the younger ones. It's hard to tell somebody who's in constant chronic pain, hey, you shouldn't take this magic pill that makes it go away. And, not to digress too much, but they're not asking for all the stuff that comes with it. They just don't want to be in pain.
Right.
So, and then you get here, and I mean, Greg Snumbo's right. There's a tremendous amount of cynicism in the pharmaceutical companies that built distribution points here.
Yeah.
Like when they built the UPS plant in Powell County, or the UPS station in Powell County, they knew what they were shipping in. They aren't that dumb. Nobody can be that dumb.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know how to untease it all by the end of this radio show.
Haven't solved the state's problems by the end.
Well, we've still got 50 minutes left.
All right.
We might solve everything. By the way,
we might get there.
Yeah.
88. Well, we haven't done in the last 6 episodes. We'll be there. Thank you so much for being on my goofy show about Kentucky politics, by the way.
Thanks
It's a
for
lot of fun.
inviting us.
Yeah.
That's great.
No, I mean, well, this is my theory, is that liberalism without structure is wind, just a lot of wind, and that this job of the smart liberals, who I'm including you all if you don't mind,
Yay.
is to build structures that can capture all this random energy, because if not, it just flies off into the ether. I mean, I don't know what this does, but it's fun. And also, before I get too distracted, Nelson County, one of the Nelson County Democrats and Republicans. Have you been following this story?
No, I don't think so.
It's fascinating. So a guy in Nelson County decided that he didn't want to be a Republican anymore because the chair of the Nelson County Republican Party or something like that. Have you followed this at all?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah. He decided that he didn't like the Republican, so he wanted to run against him as a Democrat, so he switched over to the Democrats.
Oh,
and then the Democrats sued him to make him stop.
Yes.
Yeah, his name was David Reed, and we were reporting on this the whole time, and they asked us very nicely to read something that came from it on the air today, but they wanted us to. I can't find it, and I'm not going to waste too much time looking for it right now. I'll just look for it in a second. But they wanted us to let us know that David has withdrawn his candidacy. And I'm a little sad. I thought it was funny. Like, I didn't like disagreeing with Anna White's, but other than that, like, I thought the whole thing was great. Like, I thought he made perfectly good case. A perfectly good case. Like, the Democrats were all like, he doesn't believe in democratic stuff. All he believes in is beating Republicans. I'm like,
so here's the thing on that. Let's take that piece though. Let's take that piece. That on your filing paperwork.
Yeah.
If you select a party on your filing paperwork, you are signing that you believe in the tenets of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party.
Yeah.
So you are signing an official state document that you believe in it. And if you were a Republican for the last 35 years, and on December the 30th of 2019, because you have to change in order to vote in the primary, you got to change.
And that's when he changed, was December 31st,
December 31st of 2019, you change your party registration to Democrat solely to run in the Democratic primary. Mm-hmm. Are you legitimately able to sign that paperwork, your filing paperwork?
Well, when you put it in that case, and it's going to court, you have to be able to say, well, what do the Democrats believe? And beyond beating Republicans, it's really hard to name something that we all agree on. I hate to, this is something I complain, I don't know, I want to say complain, but this is something that I talked about a lot during last year, is that we don't have a clear mission statement. We don't have anything that we clearly stand for. We have a few well-honed dodges, that everybody does, like, oh, the Southern strategy took care of it and all the racists are Republican now. Everybody says that. So,
yeah.
That's one thing that I think all Kentucky Democrats believe. I think everybody really believes that. So as long as David Reed believes that, like, what else is there that we all agree on? It's a collection of positions.
Okay. So if I told you that there was a way that you yourself or anybody that listens to this could be a part of helping craft that message, you want to hear about it?
Yeah, heck yeah.
So every 4 years, the Democratic Party goes into reorganization, right?
Yeah.
We reorganize the party from the very bottom level to the very top. Mm-hmm. And by very bottom level, I'm talking your precinct. So every precinct in the state of Kentucky, and really across the country, has to have a man, a woman, and a youth. And youth is 35 and under representative, and that makes up the precinct committee. I will tell you that of the precincts in Fayette County, the vast majority of them have no representation at all.
Yep.
Not let alone having all three. They have nobody that represents their precinct.
Yep.
So then the precinct committee in a place like Fayette County or Jefferson County, where we have what's called legislative districts. In other counties like Clark County, you go straight to the county at that point from precinct committee. But in Fayette County, we'll get together, and all of the precinct committee folks have the ability to come and elect the legislative district chair and vice chair.
Yeah.
So legislative district, for me, it's the 88th. If you're here, downtown, it's the 75th, so forth. Mm-hmm. So you elect your LD chair and your LD vice chair, and then you elect your at-large members. So you have your at-large members that represent you on the county committee. Mm-hmm. So then the LD chairs elect the county chair. And then we all come together in, I think it's June the 6th, I think is the day for the state convention over in Louisville, where we elect the state central executive committee for the entire Kentucky Democratic Party. So my point being is that if you want to have a direct effect on what the message of the Democratic Party is, what the message of the Kentucky Democratic, the structure of the party is, then show up.
Yep. Absolutely.
I mean, we can sit there on Twitter and social media or wherever and complain about the Democratic Party until we're blue in the face. This is an opportunity, and it happens once every 4 years, and it's coming up. The precinct committee meetings are, the conventions.
21st. Yeah, Saturday the 21st.
Exactly. We are here. It's right around the corner. This is not a put it in your calendar for way down the road. It's right now. You want to change the party, be a part of the reorganization.
Actually, I want to check something with you, because Powell County is saying it's actually a little bit more than right now. Let me just read what they've got here. They said something about, you need to, or you can submit your nomination form to run as a precinct committee member, but you're supposed to submit it by March 6th. Do you know anything about this?
No.
Okay.
Is that statewide?
Yeah, well, Powell County was saying that there's some sort of rigmarole here, and that you're better off, if you really want to be a precinct chair, you're better off submitting the PDF now. I didn't completely understand it. I just read the headlines on a lot of things, to be perfectly
Well,
honest.
I mean, I know that, for example, on Fayette Dems, we're asking for you to go ahead and submit it. It just goes ahead and gives us that information. Because precinct, when we've got, what are we at, 200 and something precincts in Fayette County, that day is a nightmare of trying to manage. We've got the packets have to go out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not the easiest process on the precinct especially. And so... I'm trying to... So, I mean, there is, if you go to kydemocrats.org or you go to the Fayette County Democratic Party, you're going to find the nomination form. So, the March the 6th deadline is the pre-convention self-nomination.
Yeah.
Completing this pre-convention nomination is not required, though.
Okay, good, yeah.
So you can show up at your voting place for the precinct convention and say, I want to be the precinct committee man, or I want to be the precinct committee woman, or I want to be the precinct committee youth, which again is 35 and under.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to have to be one of the...
I'm right there with you. I'm not the youth anymore.
No longer the youths.
And say that you want to do it. And, the thing is if you really want to make sure that it's you, bring a friend with you, and I promise you that 2 or 3 votes is going to be enough to make sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And remember, it's 2 or 3 registered Democrats in your precinct.
Yeah.
But if you have 2 or 3 people that vote for you in the precinct committee, you're going to win unless you're in... there may be 5 precincts that will have a lot of people at. Otherwise... my precinct there, I bet there's me and one other person.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? We're automatically on the committee.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And normally we're asking people to, hey, would you mind to do that? I mean, that's how I served one time. Someone reached out and said, can you do this?
Yeah.
Okay,
No, that's why I'm doing it this year. Because,
there's no one else.
My precinct, there's cows and there's my family.
I don't think the cows
weren't available, so.
But not yet.
Not yet.
22nd century, we're getting there.
But I mean, the reality is, it's a great opportunity to be a part of actually turn your frustration with the party into actual change.
Yeah.
And this is where it happens. It is, for all the complaints and so forth about this is the most democratic thing we do. Yeah. That every 4 years we completely abolish the structure and start over.
Well, I think that's a problem across the board in everything. We like to complain a lot, but when it comes down to, are we getting involved with how to change it? We complain about our schools. Well, are you showing up to the school board meetings? Are you showing up to your PTA? Yeah, we are. But I hear a lot of people complaining.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen you at a meeting. So what are you doing about it?
Yeah.
So if you want change, that's how you do it. You get involved.
Yeah.
You make change happen.
Actually, I did my homework yesterday, and I would love to tell you what I've been doing, but we'll get to that in a second.
All right, excellent.
Because we're working with education, the political side right now, and we touch on jail issues, our criminal justice issues a lot here. And I went out and did some research yesterday, which I can't wait to tell you all about. But what I'm trying to say is that if you are a UK student, and one assumes that at least some of the people listening to this are UK students, although the vast majority aren't, obviously, but in Kentucky, you have the option of keeping your registration in your hometown or wherever it is, right?
Right.
Or you could register here in UK.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you're registered here at UK, there may be a little bit of a fight to be in your precinct. But if you keep your hometown registration, and if you're willing to drive home on March 21st, you can have a huge effect.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I could have stayed here in Fayette County and had a much smaller effect. And instead, I went out to Clark County to a rather rural area. And it turned out to be a really good move. It turned out to be very helpful to a lot of people around just because that area had no Democrats whatsoever.
Right.
Or at least no active ones. I mean, they're there, but there's just old folks in their homes and watching their cows.
Oh, look, I think that the excuse me, I think the challenge is, and I take a lot of issue with the folks within my party that scream the 120 county strategy, and there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Because that generally, to me, is a catchphrase for we're going to ignore the things that folks in Jefferson and Fayette care about in order to attract folks in rural Kentucky. And I agree, we have to care about rural issues,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that we abandon, LGBT rights, that we abandon our stances on women's reproductive rights, that we abandon the stuff that makes us work in the urban cores.
Yeah.
How a true 120 county strategy is, instead of throwing a fit when Geoff Šebesta leaves Fayette County to go to Clark County, is to encourage him. Now, how do we help you bring some, progressivism, some liberalism, some democratic stuff to Clark County?
Well, Okay, so we only have about 25 minutes left. Do you all have anything you really want to hit on, or can I start talking?
Go for it.
Okay, so what I did in Clark County is, where's my sketchbook? Oh, here we are. So my big thing in Clark County has been jail reform, specifically reform of the Clark County jail, specifically. Because Kentucky, we can go to the global statistics. Kentucky has the largest incarceration rate. If we were our own country, we'd have the third biggest women behind bars in the world. Yeah. All that. Clark County is a big part of that. Clark County specifically, the Clark County jail, historically, going back like 200 years, it's always been enormous. It's always been a huge problem. So I went and I talked to the Clark County jailer today. I've been trying to get people out of it. My New Year's resolution is to get as many people out of the Clark County jail as I possibly can. There's this thing called the Bail Project. Have you heard of this?
No.
It's a pay-it-forward bail system. They started it in Cleveland and in the Bronx, and they're actually doing it in Louisville too. What they do is they go into the prison, they find somebody who's in there because they can't pay their bail. Mm-hmm. They pay their bail. And that person shows up for their court date, and they've got something like a 96% rate of people showing up. And they get the money back, and they pay the next person out. And
that's excellent,
And Cleveland is working extremely well because they're finding that once the people are out of jail, they can plan their defense more effectively.
Right.
And they come back, and the prosecutors are dropping the charges or dismissing their cases.
Right.
You're doing everything that happens in pretrial. Things just get thrown out left and right. But there's so much less pressure, and the people can defend themselves better because they haven't been freezing in a concrete room for.
Right. Well, and you aren't pressured to plead to something that you shouldn't plead to, whether you're innocent or maybe these are not the charges you could plead down and get off with probation or something. But if you have to spend 6 months to a year stuck in jail while you're waiting trial, which is a common problem, that's
Yeah. And I never really realized the logistical difficulties of planning your defense when you're not allowed to talk to people.
Right.
But it really is substantially more challenging when you don't have the internet. So I went and I talked to the Democratic jailer in Clark County, who, to me, Frank Doyle, I think he's doing a wonderful job. I think he's a good guy. I have problems with his outlook, for sure, but I have the same problems with literally everybody I've talked to. Anybody in any position of power sees jails as a profit source.
Right.
And it's not just the jailer. Like, you talk to anybody for even a couple minutes, and it usually slips out that, they want to balance Clark County's budget on our jail.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I'm not going to fight them on that. I always just say, well, I have some moral problems with what you just said, but, we're just going to move on. One of the things I'm trying to get across to Clark County is, if we get out the county people, you can have more state prisoners, and they pay more. Because the big thing in Clark County right now is the guy who spent 14 months in our jail and then was found innocent. Have you heard about this?
No.
That's
Well, it wasn't that he was found innocent. Didn't they just drop the charges on it?
Do you know why they dropped the charges? You know where the charges came from? You might remember this. This is the guy who got accused of child pornography because somebody on his ISP downloaded child pornography.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah. Just on the same ISP as him.
And it wasn't him.
And a Winchester police officer just randomly decided this was the guy, and they put him in jail, and they screwed up so bad.
For 14 months. But didn't they send it? Wasn't the story they're billing him for the stay?
Yeah, they're billing him for the stay.
And
they billed him for the stay. It went to court. It was a huge thing where they had a dissent. This was a fascinating
Do you remember
case.
this? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a 2-1 judges, and Sarah Combs, who I know we're not going to have time to touch on this today, but Sarah Combs is one of the people that Eastern Kentucky is finding its own set of allies, which I know Lexington doesn't agree with. But Sarah Combs is apparently enormously popular in Powell County right now. Sarah Combs was the dissent that said, look, you can't charge people when they were found innocent, and the the other two judges said, well, the meaning of the legislature is not clear. So she went and got the legislator, and he came and he told the judges what the meaning of the legislature was. And they said, it's the strangest thing because this guy's right in front of me and his mouth is moving, but I don't hear a word. No. Anyway, so they still charged him, and yes, Clark County won. And I spoke to Mr. Doyle about it today, and he was... I really like Frank. And this is the wrong place to start talking about Frank Doyle. But it does tell you what we're up against. So I was talking to Frank about it, and he said, that guy stayed with us for 14 months, and he gave us $20 for the entire thing, and then he gets out and he sues us.
Wow.
The ingratitude.
He was honestly hurt. And I was just sitting there going like, well, Frank, I can see it your way with effort.
No.
He had 2 hots and a cot. What more can you ask for?
3!
Yeah.
3!
Yeah.
Well, from their point of view, it is a business thing. And I don't know how to untie that one, because I know you're not going to get out of it by shouting at it. Like, that's a perfectly cromulent point of view.
Yeah.
That you're not just going to, wave your hands and it's going to go away. That's how people
really
feel.
It's a fundamental shift in not only legislation, but, criminal philosophy or justice philosophy. It's because we have to, right now the incentive is to, there is greater incentive to imprison somebody than there is to rehabilitate.
Yeah.
And as long as that is where, we are as a society, we're never going to fix stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, America is a business that produces rich people, and it doesn't care how many poor people are destroyed in the process. And, you want to talk about reducing people to numbers if someone is of the point of view here is if someone is of no economic use whatsoever to the enterprise of Kentucky, to the Commonwealth, at least they're worth $35 a day. And there's honor and rationality within that system, and I believe that Frank Doyle is absolutely an honorable and rational actor within that system. And it's the system,
the system that's the problem. Yeah.
And when you're talking about a system that's a problem, you're in a way, nobody takes it that way, but you're absolving the person from responsibility. Like,
right.
This was like this when you got here. This isn't your fault. We're going to change this. You're just going to do it the new way. No one's going to get mad. Nobody's going to blame you.
Yeah.
We're just moving on. So, long story short, here's what I got. They got 1 deputy to 40 inmates. They're charging $35 a day for state prisoners. Mm-hmm. They don't charge anything for county prisoners. County prisoners are on us. That's why they want to get rid of county prisoners. Mm-hmm. They have 197 beds in the Clark County Correctional Facility. This is bigger than Madison County. It's a fairly big one, except for the giant supermaxes that we're building in, any lecture like that. And they say they're at 137% capacity, but I sat there and did the numbers.
But math
it's
doesn't agree.
I'm sorry, Frank. That's 150. If you have 291 prisoners and 197 beds, you're at 150% capacity. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. I like you a lot, but that's the way it is. 183 males, 108 females. Only one person is in the Clark County Jail right now for failure to pay child support. There are 118 state inmates. We can't get rid of them, and it would be foolish to try, because that would be directly assaulting what the funding source. And I love the Clark County Democrats. I absolutely love them. I really do. I'm so happy out there with them. I really like them as people. But boy, they shock me sometimes when the county judge executive is going through and showing me how they've been balancing the budget on the prison for 20 years and what a gigantic funding source this is for our county. It doesn't make me feel good, but it's real, and I'm not going to get rid of it by shouting at it. So 118 state inmates, 291 prisoners. That leaves 173 county inmates. He would guess that about 50% of them are there for pretrial or because they can't pay bail.
Oh, wow.
That's actually far below Kentucky's average. And the reason that's so low is because we have so many state inmates.
Yeah.
And, okay, we have 20 people in home incarceration and only one person overseeing it. They had 2, and then they fired one of them because they wanted to cut back on money. So anyway, to cut that very short, so we could theoretically, by doing some sort of pay-it-forward bail system. And I think this would have a major effect because Clark County is such a historical center of incarceration in Kentucky. We could theoretically get 75 to 100 people out of that jail at any given time, have them at 100% capacity, keep their budget the same, let them spend their budget more accurately, and, feed people food that didn't come from Bob Barker Company and stuff like that. God,
And then people can continue to work if they have jobs. They can continue to support their families, and the economic impact of that would be, for a small county,
Absolutely.
you're talking about how many people?
36,000 people.
Yeah.
36,000 people.
Yeah.
And okay, we have 36,000 people. 18,000 in the 18K in the county, 18K in the city. We have 13 deputies and 1 sheriff for the county. We have 54 cops for the city. So there's probably something to that. And we can go through, I'm afraid the Winchester police is going to get angry at me, but we can go through major disasters the Winchester police lately, like arresting the wrong guy for child pornography. The car chase, the fatal car chase back in September. Do you know the story with that? You know that they were specifically told by the dispatcher to stop chasing.
Right.
And all the Winchester sheriff's deputies stopped. And it was a Winchester police officer that kept chasing and led directly to the death of 2 completely innocent people.
That's awful.
So, I will say I've been going to all these meetings. I've been going to fiscal court meetings. I've been going to county commission meetings. City commission meetings. I don't know who's in charge of Winchester Police Department.
Really?
It's yet to be mentioned. Nothing has been discussed. No oversight. No, literally just doesn't come up. And if you live in Winchester, your main point of contact with the government is the police.
Yeah.
People are terrified of Clark County because of police. Clark County is famous for crime. That's what we're known for around the world.
L8.
Yeah, L8 crime.
Yeah.
Okay. So, not to complain about it, I do have to say 2 things about Clark County that I've noticed, which is, 1, we are, strangely enough, the culinary capital of Kentucky. Nobody's noticed that yet, but we actually are. We're where beer, cheese, and ale was invented. Top that. And also,
but wait a minute though. It wasn't the lady Nancy? Gosh, what's her name? Nancy. She was the image that was used for Aunt Jemima. Isn't she? She's from Clark County.
Is she?
Oh, really?
Yes, I swear I just saw that.
No,
go on. I'll confirm.
You know who's from Clark County?
Who?
Helen Thomas. Do you remember her? The really famous reporter. She died of old age. Like Obama was super nice to her.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, she was from a Palestinian family right there in Clark County.
Oh.
And also, I realized this the other day, but if you go to my house and stand on the porch and look east, if you walked east from my house, you would not find a more conservative county than Clark County until you'd circumnavigated the globe and you came back to the Basin and Range in Nevada. Clark County is literally the eastern outpost of conservatism. At all. There's you go past there, what do you have? You have Eastern Kentucky, you have West Virginia, you have Virginia, then you have we are literally the edge of conservatism. I don't know what that means, but it fascinates me. Anyway, so there's my digress. That's my homework. That's what I've done about Clark County prison issues this week. Is I went and talked to the jailer. The next step is to go talk to all the magistrates and to try to talk to people who've actually done this bail project before, and to get started on that, because
that would have an incredible impact.
Yeah,
I hope so. Well, yeah, 70 people out of jail is asking a lot, but even the people that do this in Cleveland say they manage to get out about 6 people a day.
So I find it disheartening that, and I love the solution. I love the idea, the pay it forward bill. That's what we have to resort to instead of actually reforming the cash bail system.
Yeah.
That and a great example
it's like a
is
GoFundMe for your healthcare.
Depending on what day you're arrested.
Yeah.
Depends on which judge you're going to see.
Right.
Yep.
And if you see one judge, that particular judge never does the 10% reduction.
Yeah.
You see another judge on the very next day always does the 10% reduction in bail. Or drops it to 10% of the bail amount here in Fayette County. Mm-hmm. And that's just sad that there's, disparity just based on what day you're arrested.
Yeah.
Let alone before we even talk about that the cash bail system completely needs to be reformed. And I have to she was not from Clark County. She was from Montgomery County. Nancy Green, 1890. She went to work for she became one of the wealthiest African American women of her time. One of the few that had access to wealth in the at the turn of the century.
Really?
But she was the model that was used for the pancake, the flour company that made the syrup.
Was she a chef or something, or?
No, she was a model.
Oh, well, good for her. Hey, if you got it, flaunt it, man. Awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But she was from Montgomery County, which is Mount Sterling, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the
next county over.
Well, no, I live on the Clark Montgomery Powell line. Like, they all meet right there. Actually, you know what else happened right there, where all three of those places meet? That's where the last big colony of passenger pigeons was.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. One of the very last passenger pigeons ever was shot right near my house.
Oh, that is something to be proud of.
Clark County has a tradition of epic selfishness that will not be removed. You know, one of my hippie friends told me, he's like, Kentucky's a Taurus. And I thought about it, I was like, oh my God, you're right. This state is stubborn, and it's bovine, and it's all heart, and it's no brains sometimes.
Sometimes.
And boy, can it be selfish. You know, I mean, but that's Clark County, and I will not be remaking Clark County. I will be dealing with Clark County as it exists. I will not be constructing a new Clark County based on my fantasies of what Winchester should be. Like, this is the town. This is what it is. We've had this jail for 200 years. Everybody's pointing their finger in a circle.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's saying, like, oh, it's somebody else's fault. Oh, the city has to change it. Oh, the state has to change it. Oh, the government has to change it. But it's us, and it's always been us.
Yeah.
And we just have to stop.
Well, if you get that project going, too, you can also measure what the impact is in other areas, and that may convince to expand that beyond Clark County. I think that would be helpful. Beyond just the monetary savings to the county jail, how does that impact the quality of life of the, whether that's the inmate or the family or the community as a whole, to do different measures, just being a nerd.
I don't even know how to measure that, but it seems to me like people would be happier if they weren't in jail.
Public health impact.
There's got to be something. I mean, you've got to be able to measure it, or it's not really real, and I understand that.
Right, and it's not evidence based, and I know we don't like evidence based policy in Kentucky, but that would be something to throw some weight behind, to say, look, this actually works, and this is not only just saving us money, but it's making people better. It's making people healthier. It's helping our communities.
It has a direct impact on the community. And the good part of when you add the evidence-based portion to it, and we actually see the stats and the figures, then that's how we can hopefully then go back to trying to fix the societal issue that exists with our criminal justice system. To show that the incentive to imprison is not as important, at least to the folks that are balancing the budget of Clark County.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I can demonstrate to these people that prison is not profitable, then that speaks to them in the language they understand, because this isn't about, like, this is politics. This isn't about me. It isn't about agreeing with my friends. It's about finding difficult things and discussing them with the people who actually have at least the hope of some impact.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, the system does just have its own weight. And the system does what the system wants to, and we're all stuck on it. And, some people get fed into the top of the system, and some people get fed into the bottom, but we're all part of the same thing that's rolling downhill. So, I want to do this without judgment and without blame, and without making fun of people too much, which is my real weakness. Because I really like all these people, but it's just when they look you in the face and they're so hurt that this guy who was in jail for 14 months didn't even pay them.
Gosh.
It's just like, oh, well, bless your heart.
Bless your heart.
Well, we're contractually obligated to start playing some music at some point, so do y'all have anything else you want to say, or you've got, the floor is yours.
Well, I mean, I know that thousands and thousands have already voted for Super Tuesday.
Yeah.
How's it going to turn out? What's your thoughts?
I'm too zen these days. Like, whatever. I'm fine.
Whatever.
You do one thing, you get one thing. You do another thing, you get another thing. Like,
okay.
Bloomberg will end the Democratic Party.
That's probably the most interesting thing to look at right now is how is his $500 million bet gonna play out, because this is the first time he's going to be on the ballot in the primary. Is it going to have an effect? And I mean, I don't think that it in any shape, fashion, or form it takes away from Bernie Sanders support.
No.
I mean, a Bernie Sanders voter is not a Mike Bloomberg voter.
Parallel universes.
So he's taking away from that. Well, in my opinion, he's taken away from the far right of the Democratic Party, which would not vote for Bernie Sanders. They're going to go to the Biden vote. Yeah. So is Bloomberg in effect now shooting the foot of what he said he was getting in the race for? Or one of his reasons for getting in the race. If he wanted to stop Bernie Sanders from being the nominee, now he's doing everything opposite of that. He's helping Bernie Sanders to win. So maybe Mike Bloomberg is a Bernie Sanders best.
Deep down, yeah. No, he is.
They should say thank you.
I absolutely agree with that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
Like, Mike Bloomberg did Warren and Sanders an enormous favor by showing up and being a billionaire for them to yell at. You know, it was, and I think that as long as he doesn't win, the fact that he got to go down to, was it Selma, and everybody just stood up and turned their back to him, that was worth it. That was worth $500 million alone, just for him to find out how much he screwed up in New York City. That's fantastic.
I don't know. I thoroughly enjoyed the and I think the second debate, I think she probably hurt herself on it a little bit, but the first debate had that Elizabeth Warren been there from the beginning. You know what? Yeah. Now I've got this evil person that I can sit here and touch with my finger on the debate stage.
Yeah.
That was the Elizabeth Warren that we missed.
Yeah.
And she was on fire in that debate.
And you could see what that would look like to have her going head-to-head against Trump.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's why Bloomberg did us all a big favor. I mean, he spent his money well. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I think that Warren, I like her a lot. I just don't think it was ever going to happen for her. I will say this because I know Geoff doesn't listen to the show when he's not on it. Negative campaigning does not work. Democrats do not reward negative campaigning.
Not in a primary. No. We definitely don't.
Yeah, it's like when you attack, you get to see both sets of poll numbers drop. It's and
particularly for women. I mean, that was the
No, we are so
sexually tinged, sexist tinged argument with that. Oh, she's very angry. She's very
We are not rewarding and it's proportionally even worse for a female candidate. The negative campaigning, the governor's race.
Yeah.
Adam Elam was really the only one that went negative, and it never helped.
No,
I mean, it never helped him. If anything, I think it pushed some people to Andy that otherwise might have gone with maybe Rocky, or maybe have stayed with Adam.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. We don't like it. We don't. We just won't have it.
I mean, that's why Biden's still in the race. Biden's never attacked anybody, to the best of my knowledge. He's run a completely positive campaign.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at, Julian Castro. Mm-hmm. He went after Biden and went after Biden's age, and like days later, he was gone.
Yeah.
I do find it interesting that the very last debate, there was that back and forth between Mayor Pete and Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah.
That they were kind of vicious to each other, and then suddenly they're both gone now.
Well, Warren was very much a convincing front runner until the whole thing with the Iowa debate, where she accused Sanders of sexism, and then all of a sudden, I mean, like, that was you could probably like see the numbers if you look at the chart. That's certainly the way it felt. Yeah, so, I mean, negative campaigning, I think it's brave, and I'm glad people do it. I mean, I'm trying to avoid talking about Wade McNabb too much. I'm trying to save that for a couple of years, but, like, I sure as hell hope people go negative against Wade McNabb in a couple of years. But,
well, and that's, that's a perfect example of, and it's a perfect example of an electorate that won't take the simple step to do a Google search on who they're voting for.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you have to do is you type the name into Google, and the very first result is there.
And that's my district, and I did the same. It was about 4 days before the election, and I Googled him, and I was, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no. And by then it was too late.
Yeah.
It was too late to get the word out. The
Mm-hmm.
papers weren't reprinting the articles from the last time he ran. It was too late.
Yeah.
And I work with a national LGBT organization, political action committee that endorses openly LGBT candidates. And in this case, and we like to say that we endorse from dog catcher to president. We want all offices. We want to see representation from the LGBT community.
Yeah.
And I was asked about that race, and I was like, go to Google, type his name in. And I'm seriously, if you go to the very first result was before the election, it may not be anymore, but the very first result talked about his past issues. And I just don't understand how we could miss it that bad. And then the news just let him have a complete pass on that.
Well, they were scared because he has a tendency of suing people that report on him.
But they reported on it 4 years prior.
Yeah, exactly. And they were told that if they reported again, he was going to sue.
When he was a Republican.
Yeah.
Do I need
And
to
then-
represent you pro bono now?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Well,
you're
I mean-
reporting on it.
No, we shouldn't go into that too much. But yeah, he exists, and he's out there, and he is being creepy and weird. Yeah. Not to me, because I don't live in the town anymore. Not to me that I know of, although things have happened. When you don't like somebody, it's not that I dislike him, because I actually like him as a person. But when you're afraid of somebody, and I am afraid of him, he scares me. I am honestly afraid of him. And something bad happens completely unrelated, then you tend to blame him. But I find him terrifying. I don't think he can possibly be operating by the same moral rules that I am, because I would never ever seek a position of authority. If I was completely innocent, I would still say well, that's it. Public office and being a school teacher are closed to me. I'm not going to do this because of what it would do to the people around me, because I care about other human beings at least a little bit. And the idea that someone who has been convicted of this, even if they were innocent, which by the way he most extravagantly is not, he is really, really, really not innocent of those charges at all. And you don't need to defend me on that one at all. He's not innocent. He did it. But even if he was innocent, prudence seems to me would indicate that you would not put other human beings in this position of having to evaluate you. And he's not innocent. So I understand his desire for redemption and acceptance, but the fact that he's already shown so little self-control in the face of everything society demands, and then he's doing this, is terrifying. And I'm so glad I'm not in his district anymore, and I'm so glad I don't see him around. And I can't wait for 2022. And, that's, it's really dumb to be talking about this on the air, I suppose, but
Truth is a defense to defamation, and it is much harder for a public figure to sue for defamation because it's a completely different standard. So we talked about that on Facebook with your
especially when you're extremely guilty, and we will have no problem producing the people that you affected, because they're still out there and they're still very upset.
And that's that's part of the interesting thing about the defamation suits, is that they tend to have the opposite effect of what you want. You don't want those things out there. You don't want them said. And then you file a lawsuit, and then it becomes an even bigger story, and then you bring people in to testify, and you don't want that in most cases.
No, and he's really smart. He's really smart. I learned a lot just from a couple conversations with him. He actually has a better handle on electoral politics than practically anybody else I've met. That's why I'm really honestly afraid of him. He wrote me at one point, and I said, I don't want to talk to you because I'm afraid of you.
No.
I'm not afraid of many people. That guy is. Whew.
Well, because of an electorate not doing a simple Google search, we've now given him a badge and a gun.
Yes. Yeah.
And we've given him legal authority that, because of our antiquated constitution in this state, it matches the same as our sheriff to an extent.
Right.
But that is not the Constitution's fault. The thing that really taught me about the McNabb situation is that is the voters' fault. The voters screwed that up.
Oh,
The
absolutely.
information was there. The office of constable is a good office
In some areas.
Yeah.
it has lost its need in Jefferson and Fayette County.
Yeah, and it's duplicative service. It's not necessary.
But and that's where the constitutional part comes in, is that the legislature has to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot to let the entire state of Kentucky vote to decide whether or not Fayette and Jefferson County can completely abolish the office.
Yeah.
And there is a major duplication of service. There is, and there are fantastic. We have got 3 constables in this city. 2 of them are fantastic.
Clark County has excellent constables.
There are,
absolutely.
and in the rural areas, you talked about having 13 deputies and 1 sheriff. The constables add to that.
Yes.
They add to that ability to be out there to help.
Yeah.
The problem we run into is that there was a constable in Jefferson County a few years ago that was at Walmart shopping, and some shoplifter tried to leave, and he opened fire on them in the parking lot.
Oh, no.
That's a problem. We've had constables in the past that they'll set up their own speed traps on New Circle Road. That's a problem. But
and you don't have to have any sort of law enforcement experience. In theory, I could run. I could be the constable.
I wish you had. I would have voted for you.
Well, maybe that's in my future. I don't know. Let me announce my candidacy here today.
Yeah. I love the idea of a citizen elected police officer. I think that's the way it needs to go. I absolutely support sheriffs and constables. I think they're a better option than police, because I think I don't know. I love the way that Kentucky has practically everything elected. And I think across the board, it's almost always a success, except I'm starting to have second thoughts about elected judges. Just because elected judges don't... The qualities that make somebody a good electoral candidate and the qualities that make somebody a good judge seem to me...
Again, it comes down to people not informing themselves and not engaging in the process, because it takes a lot to get rid of a bad judge.
Yeah.
It takes a lot.
Yeah. I just wouldn't, and it does, but I just think about the last 4 years. You look at what Trump has done to the federal bench. To imagine, if our judges were truly appointed, and it likely would have to be appointed at the gubernatorial level,
right.
If Matt Bevin had appointed our district and circuit judges across the state, what criminal justice would look like in this state after 4 years of that?
Okay, you talked me out of it. We're elected judges for sure. Yeah, right.
and I mean, it's not perfect.
No.
But at least the elected takes it out of the hand. It takes some of the partisan issue out of the hand. And we do make them nonpartisan races, and we're very good for the most part across the state about judges honoring that nonpartisan and not trying to push themselves to a party label. Now, Whitney Westerfield, who ran for Supreme Court last year, was an exception to that.
Yeah.
He very much wanted people to know that he was a Republican.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we get to avoid that, and that's good.
Yeah.
And I think one problem with the elections is that the very people who are most knowledgeable about that system, which is your local attorneys, who are going to know whether that judge is good or that judge is a problem, are often silenced by the fact that, well, if I come out against Judge so-and-so, then my clients are going to suffer because I have to practice in front of Judge so-and-so.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to find attorneys who are willing to run against Judge so-and-so, because otherwise your clients are impacted in the meantime. Just thinking about one local judge's race of, we had to find somebody who did not practice in front of that judge in order to run against that judge, because nobody else could do it. And nobody else could come out and say, please don't vote for, please, donate, things like that.
I guess
people
you don't
still
want me to
having
guess who
to,
you're talking about here, but
people still having to donate to that judge to make sure that, that they are seen publicly as, I support you, please don't hurt my clients.
Oh my.
Because we have judges who will be petty about those things. And we have some great judges. We have great judges in Fayette County, but there
I liked
are
Goodman a lot. What's her name?
Emily Goodman.
Emily, I was really glad she beat Reynolds.
Oh, Julie,
Yeah, I've seen a couple
I'm sorry,
judges.
Julie.
Yeah, Julie Goodman,
Goodwine was, my mind got off.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Goodwine's another good one.
Oh, she's
But-
excellent.
Yes,
Yeah.
Julie Goodman is a fantastic judge. We've had some stinkers.
Yeah.
I mean, we had Phil Pott, who I was one of the first times I was ever interviewed on a national news scale was when Phil Pott said that his quote was that same-sex marriage was an oxymoron, like jumbo shrimp. And I was called and had to do an interview on that quote. and this was a family court judge that was deciding on adoptions by LGBT couples.
Right.
I'm sorry to throw that on you with 5 minutes left.
Yeah,
but
we
that
have
is,
4 minutes left.
that is a
Wow.
great story that exists out there. Philpott Jumbo Shrimp.
Well, I'm glad he's gone, right?
He's gone, yes.
Okay, we're
he's
safe from
gone.
that one.
He retired, yeah.
Okay, yeah, we have like 4 minutes left, so we really have to tie it up. But long story short, whatever America decides with Super Tuesday is going to be fine with me. Like, I think Biden, I hate suspense, and I think Biden will kill the Democratic Party dead. I think that is my opinion, and you may disagree, and I know you're much bigger on Democratic unity than I am, but I think Biden and McGrath in November equals no Kentucky Democratic Party.
Oh, well, we're SOL in Kentucky, I think, no matter what. We're going to...
I think Sanders gives us the ability to hold on in a way that none of the else do, but yeah.
I'm
too optimistic.
I mean, Mitch McConnell is going to put, if he feels threatened, he's going to put $60 million in this race again. The president is going to need Kentucky for his reelection. You got Andy Barr running for reelection. I mean, you got the state legislature. It's going to be a tough year for Kentucky Democrats.
Yeah. I can come up with all my various excuses for why we might be able to wiggle out a rep or two, but yeah, no, it's not good. It's not good at all. But if Sanders is on the ballot, I think it will pull excitement in the state in a way that Biden simply won't.
In the districts that we're already going to win.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem. You know, you look at the 99th Rocky seat that we've held for 50 years.
Yeah.
Now, granted, part of that was because Rocky had been there for 35 years, but the turnout on the Republican side of that race was at presidential year levels.
Yeah.
The turnout on the Democratic side was abysmal.
Yeah.
I mean, it was awful. And I think that's the challenge is how does, no matter how we feel or whether we agree or disagree on, the platform on Bernie Sanders' platform, all Donald Trump has to do is go on TV and say he's a socialist.
Yep.
And that's the scary word in rural Republican areas. How does a House district that's in eastern Kentucky, they're not going to buy that. They're going to fall for that trap that the president and the Republican Party is laying if Sanders is the nominee. They're going to do it anyways if Biden is the nominee because they're just going to call us baby killers like they always do.
Yeah.
But I think that it's just going to be a tough year for us across the board in the state. And I hate to be that negative Nancy, but that's the reality. I think it's going to be an exceptionally tough year for us.
Everybody knows it to the point that everybody's admitting it. It's absolutely true. I will say that I haven't really been dealing with Rocky's part of the state too much, but I've been working a lot in Powell and Wolf and Menifee and stuff like that. That's going for Sanders. That area is going to be solidly liberal, Democratic. It's going to surprise you. I really think that. It's like that Wolf County actually went for Bashir, and we almost pushed Powell County over. We got so close. It'd be a better story if it had actually worked.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not too worried about those kids. I like those kids a lot.
Well, that's good to hear. That's fantastic to hear.
Yeah. I mean, fight all the way down. That's what Democrats, liberalism is a philosophy in abeyance. We're at our best when we're at our worst. So we'll do it. Hello, and so here's the next DJ. So thank you very much for listening to Radio 3 Eskippakithiki. And I don't know how to pronounce it either. Thank you, Josh and Andrea, for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me,
You're certainly welcome anytime. It was not a surprise to me that we wandered into Wade McNabb territory with the three of us. Do you want us to play a song to give yourself... Yeah, okay. And now I'm going to play this song. Bonus points to everybody who recognizes this song. And here it goes.